but these fucks won't even give me their measurements.
Right.
Like, I got Leanne's measurement, Leanne's dad's measurement, I got Bert's daughter's fucking measurements. No Bert.
I was like, if the check engine light comes on, it's just the BMW saying hello. And you thought that was funny.
What's up, folks? Welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. This episode is brought to you in part by HelloFresh. I love my HelloFresh. It is so delicious. The recipes they send every week, there's like over 50 possible episodes to do with 70 convenience items. You know what a convenience item is? It's a quick breakfast. It's a snack. It's even a dessert, right? Stuff that's just ready to eat, right? And I love to cook. I got a brand new kitchen at my new house, but you know what I hate? Grocery shopping. I hate figuring out what to buy. And that's why HelloFresh is great, because when you're choosing your menu items for each week, it's almost like ordering food off like Uber Eats or something. You order a finished meal, you see what it's going to look like, and then just the ingredients for that meal, the recipe, the ingredients, the spices, the sauces, it just shows up together, nice and fresh, packaged exactly the right amount of ingredients for the number of people you select in your family. And there's a whole bunch of options, from vegetarian stuff, healthy stuff. The chef selects. That means they're not healthy. That's what that means. But it means it's more rich and delicious. And HelloFresh isn't just for dinners. You can shop the HelloFresh market for quick breakfasts, wholesome snacks, even desserts. Find everything you need to satisfy your cravings without stepping foot in the grocery store or the mini mart. HelloFresh works on your schedule. The plans are flexible, and you can change your meal preferences or update your delivery day, or even change your address with just a few taps on the app. There's always something new on the menu, so you check every single week and get the latest and greatest recipes, and you can customize those meals further with Hello Custom by swapping proteins or sides, upgrading to choice proteins, or even adding a protein to a vegetarian meal. Never been easier to eat your way. So go to HelloFresh.com/SmokingTire16 and use code SmokingTire16 for 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh.com/SmokingTire16, code SmokingTire16. That'll get you 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit for a reason. We're also brought to you in part today by Off the Record. You don't need to participate in their financial ecosystem. We all know that most tickets written are not to keep people safe on the road. It's to keep people paying into a system, whether it's the ticket itself, court costs, insurance premiums, quotas, you name it. You don't want a part of it. That's why Off the Record is here. If you get pulled over for any moving violation, big or small, you gotta get Off the Record. They pair you with a qualified attorney in the location where you got that ticket, and they will fight it on your behalf. You don't personally need to go to court. It's very affordable, especially if you use offtherecord.com/TST as your link, or code TST10 on the Off the Record app. Save 10% on all legal services through Off the Record. And if they don't get those points off your record, it is free. You don't pay. It's great. Off the Record has an amazing success rate, and they cover 97% of the drivers in America. We love Off the Record. I keep the app ready on my phone, and if I'm about to get pulled over, I am confident and calm knowing I have people ready to fight that ticket on my behalf. I don't have to stress on the side of the road. I've personally had Off the Record fight 3 tickets with me, and we are 3 for 3, baby. I just scanned that ticket, sent them the scan, didn't have to do anything else. It was so easy. So go to offtherecord.com/TST or use code TST10 on the app. The codes, both the link and the regular code in the app, are good for like years from now. They're good until 2025. So just download the app, input that code, and then you've got it ready when you need it. You don't have to think about it, but it's always going to be there for you. So thanks to Off the Record for sponsoring today's program. And of course, the Patreon, patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast, the best website in the world. If you want an ad-free listening experience, you want to get the Smoking Tire Podcast the same day it's recorded and not wait till the following Tuesday or Thursday. Do you want to submit questions for our live show? Do you want a 9th podcast, an extra show every month, more Smoking Tire? Then go to patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast and sign up now. It's great. We love it over there. And that stuff keeps us going when the ads get slim. You hear me? All right, today Zach and I are in studio talking about the things we've driven recently. I spent the morning in an electric Shelby Cobra replica. Zach drove a Nissan 240 modified for big power, an Eclipse GSX. I give my thoughts on the Aston Martin DBX, and we answer your questions, including why the Tesla supercharger network isn't actually good, and more. It's a cruise show on the Smoking Tire Podcast. Hello.
Audio check to the people.
Yeah, I continued the sweating marathon this morning. Thought the heat wave was supposed to be over.
Oh, I thought you meant because of you've had a stressful day, not because of the actual heat. It's better.
No, it started by actually sweating.
Okay.
Yeah, up to Malibu to drive an electric converted Cobra called Scorpion EV. It's called. Dude from Brazil developed it.
Interesting. Is there a
I didn't post anything on the gram yet. I think if it's just scorpionev.com. Yeah, that's it. And that's the car, the silver one. I didn't know if I was going to like it. I didn't know if I was going to like it in execution. I didn't know if I was going to like it in concept, because I've always personally believed, and not that anyone can't do anything they want with their car, but I've always personally believed that like EV swapped old cars are best when the engine is not central to the driving experience, and in fact when removing the engine might improve it.
Right.
Think
Lincoln Continental,
Cadillac Eldorado, cruisers, or even trucks, Grand Wagoneer, Jeep CJ, stuff like that, where you just want torque and you want smooth power, and the engine maybe wasn't so great, or best case scenario was just there.
The engine was the appliance, really, in a cool car.
Yeah, but with a Cobra or a 911, or a Ferrari 308 or whatever, the engine is so central to the driving experience that I didn't know if I would be into this idea. And you and I discussed it briefly, and that if they had to like mass market build these things, they might have a problem because there's not a lot of like Cobra people that are going to cross over with this.
Well, Cobras are a lot like Harleys, and like what captures your literal attention when you first hear or see one is like the sound.
Right.
You turn your head, and then a lot of people just drive around making noise, and that's okay.
Right. The dude who built and is selling these originally did it. I guess he has a son with some type of autism where he can't deal with loud noises.
Oh, okay.
So he built this as the original one as a sports car that he could enjoy with his son.
That's pretty cool.
Noble mission.
Yeah.
And then his buddies and people on the internet started seeing him post it and asking him to build them. So he's sold 5 of them. He doesn't need to mass market them, but he thinks it's an interesting thing. In execution, in general, the general execution of it is pretty decent. It's Tesla battery packs. It's a single Tesla motor, rear drive, obviously. It's 600 horsepower and 685 pounds of torque. There's a screen in the center that you can see in that photo. There's also a connected app that he has, and you can adjust the power output.
Cool.
You can adjust the brake regen with the output. You can with the app. It has like regular buttons for neutral, drive, reverse, but you can also select the gear on the app. I mean, I don't necessarily know why you would, but like, why not have that there? Maybe if the button somehow broke, you could do it over the app. And then, there's cup holders where the shifter would have gone.
The giant transmission normally
is a good use of that. There wasn't a radio, or at least as far as I could see, there wasn't a radio.
That's curious in a car that's silent now.
Right.
A radio in a normal Cobra is literally pointless.
Yeah.
But here, okay.
Well, they may not have, I don't know if they have speakers. Like, I don't know if you can get a stereo in a Cobra.
I mean,
can you?
You have to put one in.
You'd have to custom make it.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
So it's 2,680 pounds. So it's on the heavier side for Cobras.
Right.
But because of how he was able to place some of the battery packs in the trunk, it moves the weight distribution to be closer to 50-50 instead of like 64-36, which is how a regular Cobra is.
Is it that bad?
A big block Cobra is quite nose heavy. Yeah. This guy claimed, are you looking up the weight distribution of the Cobra?
It's a unique car. It says a 427 Cobra is 4852 without driver, so near perfect.
Well, that's interesting.
It definitely depends on what. Right, iron block, aluminum block, depends on a lot of things. But
I think,
it seems like a lot of people are near 50-50.
Okay, well, maybe that it was a not true claim. I don't know. Bottom line is, this Cobra or any other Cobra is a 5/10 car. For me, on a modern road, I'm not Bob Bondurant racing Le Mans in '63. These cars are sketchy as fuck.
Yeah.
They are not fun to push the limits of on a canyon road. Now, I will say that the guy who built this is the car is based on Factory 5. It's a Factory 5 chassis modified a little bit so that they could get the battery boxes in the front and back and whatever. But fundamentally, it's a Factory 5 body on a Factory 5 chassis. Mm-hmm. Their stuff is okay. It's not like the greatest, but it's okay. The NVH was decent. It wasn't as clattery as I thought it would be. If the road is relatively smooth, the car was relatively smooth. There is something that is kind of nice about an open-air car that's electric, enjoying the outside quietly. There's not a lot of motor noise. It does drive very quietly. I will say there's certain things about it that are off. The side pipes, for instance, are fake.
Right,
I mean, obviously, they're there for aesthetic reasons only, and I would just assume not have fake exhaust pipes on an electric car.
Is it a 289 body or a 427?
It's a 427
yeah,
body.
It's got the wider fender.
Yeah, it's a wider fender car.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen 427s with underbody pipes.
They have them. Some of the original cars had underbody pipes.
Yeah, I mean, like
pipes.
they look.
Yeah.
You see most Cobras, I think most Kia Cobras have side pipes, but when you see it without them, you're like, it doesn't ruin it. You don't need
a lot of the original cars had underbody pipes and not side pipes. But I don't really believe in having fake things on cars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because it's a Cobra doesn't mean it has to have side pipes, especially if it has no engine.
Totally agree.
So that's one thing. They also, I hate when people do this, and I'm not saying that I'm a somebody. I'm just a guy with some GoPros, but they knew they were coming to do a dynamic driving thing with me today. They've known this for a while. It's been on the schedule for a while. But they had the car set up for some kind of photo shoot, and it was too low and the tires are too wide, and the front tire wasn't just rubbing fender, it was cutting. The edge of the fender was cutting into the tire. So when I would hit either the brakes or make a right turn, smoke would come out of the front tire.
Gotcha.
Like, it was bad. And it was bad enough where I was like, I do not feel comfortable driving this car at a real pace.
Could you feel the drag?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It was really rubbing hard.
Drag, noise, and smoke from the front left wheel.
Was the tire then not making contact only at the sidewall, but also like onto the shoulder or the tread?
Where the body comes down, the edge of the body was cutting a line into the corner of the tire.
Yeah.
So one thing was that the front tires were too wide. He had two 75s in the front and 315s in the rear, and it really should have been like two 55s or two 45s in the front. And then it was also set up too low. And it was unevenly set up. Like, even without me in the car, like the dude, like, you could say, oh, yo, Farrah, you're fat, and they didn't set it up for fat. That would be fine, except the guy who built and owned the car was just about my height and just about my weight. So,
well, if it was set up for a photo shoot where no one's in the car, but they want it to look
maybe
like sitting low,
like this,
laden, yeah.
like in this photo, basically. So it rubbed in a sketchy way. It also had manual brakes. Manual Willwood brakes. And Willwoods are not good brakes. And manual Willwoods are not good. And so it had way more power than it did brake. And so that was pretty sketchy. Now, the regen helps for cruising. You don't have to use the brakes very often. But the brakes were not good. And the fact that when I hit the brakes, the left front wheel would cut.
Right. And that makes you hesitant to get on the brakes because then you're worried about damaging the tire. Like I will say, the Crown Vic, which the video just went up today, so please go watch it. But that car has Willwood brakes.
Yeah.
When I saw them at first, I went, because we have had a number of, I'd say, questionable experiences with aftermarket brake kits from them. Not to say they're manufactured poorly, they just have not performed at the level of Brembo, StopTech, etc.
Yeah.
The ones on this Crown Vic were really good, but I think the guy to do a lot of R&D with it, with lines and everything else.
And also, they may have been power assisted. A lot of times I see those brakes are on cars without power brakes, whether it's Cobras or like Exocets and stuff like that, where they people do manual brakes. I don't know why they do that, because they stink.
For the feel.
Ugh, the worst.
For the feedback.
So,
are you a race car driver?
Yeah.
Why am I doing this voice?
But and then also related to that ride height thing for the photo shoot, the steering wheel alignment was off. So the steering wheel was like 45 degrees off.
Oh, okay.
Which drives me insane. And this guy meant well, and he's like an electrical engineer, and the big stuff, the integration of the power unit, the way that the throttle position worked with the power delivery, the regen setting, the app integration, the cleanliness of the install of the battery box in the front, and it was all pretty good. Like, it was all pretty nice. Like, I didn't put the car up on a lift and look at every little thing, but it was, at first glance, it was all pretty clean. And that's like clearly the hard part. But when you're trying to sell something for $185,000, which is how much they're selling these cars for, a little more attention needs to be paid to that final bit of setup.
Right. It's like staging a house.
Yeah.
I mean, you just go. You've come so far. To this person, I applaud their ingenuity and all that stuff. And like, it's just those little details, especially that show up in video versus maybe photos where the wheels turn and no one's really going to notice the steering wheel, but you just have to have all these little extra things built up.
And like, when you're putting that much power to the ground, like so much power and torque, like, one of my questions is like, do you want this in a Cobra? Like, when people tell me they've got a gas powered Cobra that's 600 horsepower, I go,
right,
I don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
I go, it's not only you're crazy, it's just like, that's not good. You know what I mean? The number of people that drive 600 horsepower Cobras fast, like I got out of the Cobra and I'm driving an Aston Martin DBX 707. And the pace I carried down that mountain in the crossover, 30 miles an hour through corners, quicker than the Cobra. Like, it's just, it's a Cobra. Like, they're not fast. Like, in a way that a modern car can be driven fast.
Yeah.
Like, I've never driven one that had anywhere near the level of confidence at pace that justified the kind of power people were putting into them.
Right. It's like people were putting AMG twin turbo motors in cars that were 40 years, 40 years before that motor came into being.
Yeah.
It's you time traveled and you grabbed a 2012 AMG 4-liter and then you flew back and you put it in some little Mercedes.
I mean, I've driven 5 or 6 different Cobras at this point. None of them would I drive as quickly through the canyon as I could drive a basic sporty crossover. I could take a Cobra in that 4-cylinder Macan in the canyons easily, just on the amount of confidence that I feel that the car will do what I ask it to. Mm-hmm. I'm never, ever confident that a Cobra is going to do what I want it to do. You hit a bump and it hops weird. The setup is never quite right. The brakes aren't really that effective.
We're also getting a Cobra from a different chef every time,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Macan, you go, I know the company, I know how this will probably feel. And 2 turns in, you go, I know how this is going to feel.
Yeah. And so, I applaud this dude for trying to do something. Like you said before, if he had to sell 50 or 60 of these a year, he might be in trouble. But he built one for himself. A few other folks wanted it. He thought maybe there's a business. He makes a little profit on each one. So if he sells a lot or a little, it doesn't really matter. He likes it. Mm-hmm. And I think there may be an audience with it for tech people. More like you're not going to get Cobra people, but you might get tech people.
Right. Same thing Tesla did.
Yeah. And so it's not the kind of thing I want. And it didn't, while it did change the Cobra driving experience a little bit, it didn't
probably
make
made it easier.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, because Cobras with a big power and manual gearbox, and the pedals are all shitty, so you can't really heel toe properly. And
well, the toe box in those is it's meant for one toe, not 10.
It's awful.
It's very narrow, and it makes it really hard to drive. And they're loud. The steering effort's high. The angle of the steering wheel, in my experience, is not great. It's tilted back a little it's almost too vertical. Mm-hmm. And even when the weight balance feels right, there's just this I think something we take for granted is how easy power steering has gotten, but also how accurate with new cars, where the effort's down, but the feedback is still as good as it was back then.
This had power steering, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
electric
where
power
old
steering.
Cobras normally it's you're moving a lot and you're feeling stuff, but there's just a lot of effort going into it, and making adjustments beyond, let's say, 15 degrees is usually really hard in the old Cobras because it's so many turns lock to lock.
This one had power steering and was easy to drive even with one hand. But I actually enjoyed it at 5/10. I thought it was rather pleasant at 5/10. But when I started going fast, I was like, this isn't actually fun. It's sketchy. I feel like I could die. I feel like it's going to do something I don't want it to do. I feel like the brakes aren't enough to handle the power. It's not a lot of confidence going through the corners. And, the image of a Cobra is something that's fast and loud, and the reality of a silent one is just not that. I told this guy, I said, if you should make a powertrain, that's a powertrain in a crate. That's the motor drive unit, and that people could put in other stuff, and I get why he might want this Cobra, but it didn't change my mind about
it will
Cobras.
be interesting if more of these kind of boutique companies come out where they take old sexy metal and then replace the powertrains with EV stuff, like EV West is doing, but more of them, and not so it's just bespoke. It's instead of EV West going, each project's different. People like this, because I do wonder if it will grab those folks that weren't car people, but they like pretty things and they like interesting things. They bought Teslas, and now you go, well, now you can drive to dinner on Friday night. You can still plug it in if that's where your ethos lies.
Yeah.
And you can have that, but now you have the cool, sexy 60s shape that is a timeless design.
Yeah. And for me, I'd want a 59 Eldorado that only had a 300 horsepower motor, not a huge motor, like a medium-sized electric motor, but a big battery pack where I could do 600 miles on a charge, and I could go all the way from L.A. to San Francisco, or whatever, or L.A. to Vegas, at 65 and on one charge, plenty of juice left, that kind of thing. Because you don't need all that power with a big car, but because you have the torque. The V8 in that thing was like 200 horsepower and 250 torque or something. So replicate that, So I applaud them for trying, but the ultimate execution of it did not blow me away. And it wasn't. You'll see in the video, but I was not inspired with confidence.
Well, it's funny. Fast. Was it basically it handled like every other Cobra you've driven? But the problem is that the powertrain feels like it's from the present.
Kind of.
And the handling feels like it's still from the past.
Yeah, kind of.
So you have to if there's a way to bring the handling of these cars more towards the present, I think that's what we want. After we've driven, good resto mods that handle like fairly modern cars or modern cars in general, you go, well, is there a way to make these old sports cars that are so legendary feel a little bit closer to, something from Detroit Speed?
Yeah,
or
that's what
Maximum.
What you would do is you'd work with Detroit Speed or the equivalent, but. And maybe if you wanted to build an autocrosser or something that was different, or all-wheel drive kind of thing, you could do it. But for anything that's a sports car or a sporting vintage car, typically the engine is really part of that character, especially if it's a 911, or especially if it's a muscle car, or especially if it's a Ferrari. Maybe not if it's a Volkswagen microbus, or maybe not if it's a Fiat 500, something like that, where the engine is just kind of the utilitarian. And certainly if it's way underpowered, like a microbus. I mean, you put 150 horsepower in a microbus, that thing's screaming.
Yeah. It'd be nuts.
So,
I could see like when I see Austin Healey's,
Yeah.
I think they're nice looking roadsters. The engine doesn't do much for me, and there's the sound is okay, and if you're behind the wheel, this is fun for a little while. But if I was going to own it every single day, for me, the greater appeal of that kind of car, which is not a racing legend like the Cobra, but it's like an old roadster, is the way it looks.
Yeah.
We won't have cars like that again. So that plus electric power, I might be more on board with than high-powered, noisy racing legend. Let's make this silent and take away 50% of its cachet. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see what the children buy.
Yeah. So I went into the Cobra thing cautiously optimistic, but at the end of the day, it didn't do it for me. Speaking
of tire rub, so I drove two cars today, and I don't want to scoop myself on how they all were, but this Eclipse GSX, 99, and it looked amazing. It was sitting on gold raised wheels, and it's silver, and the dude's owned it since high school. Shout out Miguel. He has built it out of 4 different generations of Evo. It has an Evo 8 engine, an Evo 9 turbo, an Evo 5, oh god damn it, what's the word I'm looking for? Transfer case, custom drive shaft, GSX rear end, and there's an Evo 4 something in there also. It all worked. Yeah. It all worked, which was amazing. They're all
kind of the same-ish car, right?
They're similar. The Evos basically had the smarter differentials. They had the brains and the muscle, and then the GSX, when they were here, was just a very simple all-wheel drive system, but no active differentials.
Right. It was for drag launching. It wasn't necessarily for handling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But his car was sitting in low, and it looked, perfect. Sitting still looked great. But once I got above 7/10 in the corners, I heard what sounded like the friendliest Ferrari honk on the right side. It was like, nyong, nyong, nyong. And then I came out of the corner on the left side. It was a slightly different tone. It was kind of like your car, your Ferrari. And so I just had to back it off a little bit. But raise the car half an inch. If anyone out there, if you have tire rub, when you're mid-corner,
fix the car.
Just raise the car half an inch.
Yeah.
And then because this thing was fast.
Yeah.
And it stuck really well. It was just ooh, you're so close.
Yeah.
You're so close.
It used to happen a lot when I was driving people's cars. I think maybe my 7/10 through the corners was beyond their 10/10, and they just never pushed it hard enough to to know. I mean, when I was out there in the DBX today, showing the guys with the Cobra, like the road we were going to be on, I was going like 5/10 in the DBX, and they were like, "Wow, this thing handles really well." And I was like, "This isn't handling. This is
driving.
This is just regular driving.
This is transportation.
We could be in
now.
a Wrangler right now and be fine. Like, this isn't handling. This is just transiting. Like, handling is like actually leaning the car over. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't ever go as quick in their own cars as maybe we do in the videos,
maybe.
or they just value There were people I filmed with back in the day that had never been in the canyons.
Yeah,
had sports cars and they'd never been up there. And it's like, don't you live in the city? Like, don't you see those mountains from other places in the city and go, I wonder what's up there?
Did you find that was more common with people of like younger age where they they haven't branched out yet in their world?
Big spread.
Oh wow.
Yeah, big spread. It was weird.
I don't know. One of the guys today was from Irvine, so I don't think he'd been in these canyons much.
Ortega Highway only.
I think a lot of that.
Yeah.
But the other guy with the Eclipse was from Glendora, and he was not that familiar with the canyons. He almost went the wrong way. I was like, no, go down. It's quicker, not up. Don't drive to Palmdale by accident.
But you were on Big Tahunga, right? New pavement.
Yeah, new pavement.
Awesome.
So sticky, like with sticky tires. And it's cool because you still have a little bit of like bump under it. Mm-hmm. So it's not glass smooth where it will hide a car's problems if it's too stiff.
Oh, good.
But the pavement is fucking gecko skin.
Oh,
and it
nice.
is so sticky.
Ooh,
yeah,
good.
It's
all right,
good.
Cool. I have to check that out.
But they only paved the top half of it. So the lower part,
It's
for the
still
first
shitty?
5 minutes, it's crappy, and then there's a line at an intersection, almost like when you drive from California to Nevada.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's perfect.
Is it
it's nice.
the line? Is the line when you pass the "Welcome to the Angeles Forest" sign?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That is probably
Yep.
Yeah.
The state took over there.
Yeah, it's very nice. That road is usable once more, like in anything besides off-road vehicles.
Yeah.
Or luxury
Cool.
luxury cars. Yeah.
That's awesome. This morning was such a shit show. But this DBX thing, I'm into it. The 707. When I was at Hypercar Invitational hanging out with the Aston Martin folks, they were like, "You have to drive the 707. You have to drive." And I was like, part of me was like, "How much different can it be?" But it's been over a year since I drove the regular DBX, so it's without a back-to-back, it's pretty tough to make an exact comparison of every little thing that's been improved. And I liked the DBX. Like, not everybody liked the regular DBX, but I actually liked it quite a bit. But this thing is fucking fast. I mean, really fast. And the gearbox is excellent. They use the Mercedes gearbox now instead of the ZF. They've switched to the Mercedes. Same as the E63. Same gearbox there. The suspension tuning is really, really good. The air suspension's awesome. The materials, even though the one I'm driving is a pre-pro and it's got a big sticker on the window that says prototype to remind you. I think... and I got to look. There was an email from Aston that said there was a couple things about the car that are not quite final. I think like when you hit certain buttons on the dash, like the start-stop button, when you cancel start-stop, there looks like there should be a little indicator light on the button that doesn't actually come on. The button works, but the little indicator light doesn't. So that might be one of them. But like the materials, the tightness, the tolerances, like the actual quality of the interior is like exceptional. Screen's not a touch screen, which is odd. It still uses the scroll knob. I'm getting so used to everything being a touch screen that to have a non-touch screen is a little strange to me. But
you said they're tapping it, wondering if it's frozen.
Yeah. But I find the thing very charming, and the fact that it's not platform shared with anything else, despite using the Mercedes powertrain, like it's not like you drive an Urus and it's objectively very good, but like you can tell it's an Audi, and stuff like that. Like this is like so very clearly not anything else, and like I was using it to like move. I loaded it up with boxes and stuff from my old house. I was like throwing away stacks of cardboard with it. And on the one hand, you're like, oh, $300,000 for a crossover. ridiculous. On the other hand, is it weirder to spend $300,000 on a crossover than it is to spend $300,000 on a coupe GT that you're only driving one day a week, as opposed to the crossover that you could drive every single day?
I mean, that's why they sell so many crossovers.
Yeah.
That's exactly why.
Yeah.
You know, they're far more useful, and it gives you checks enough boxes that came from that performance coupe, order form.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's loud and it's fun and it's quick. It's agile enough. Like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
And the DBX, I think, does a better job of looking like an SUV coupe than the ones that started as a box and
Yes.
they cut the back off.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, this looks a lot better than that. This looks more like the EV. I don't want to say it looks like, the EV6 does a good job of this too. Mm-hmm. The Kia, like both
It's not
of them.
that coupey. I mean, it has a fairly
But
squared
it
off.
has I like the slanted roof in the back and
Yeah,
then the
but
wing
it's
on
not
the
like
end.
the full coupe
Yeah.
roof.
Yeah.
It's a little. It's got the wing, and then it comes down on an angle.
The coupe roof. If the normal like X7 was a backyard, the coupe roof looks like you just took a shortcut through someone's property
Right.
and you just went diagonal and
Yeah.
like they just got rid of that part of the roof.
Yeah, yeah. But it's very charming, and it's a really nice thing. I mean, it's expensive, so it better be a fucking really nice thing. But I've also driven expensive things that did not quite impress, and so this thing is it's really got a lot of curb appeal. It's the distinct driving modes and the distinct suspension modes give you a lot of different good options. Seats are really comfortable. The materials are really great. I mean, they've done a phenomenal job. It's not, you could say like, oh, this is the one they should have built from the beginning, but that's too simplified. You don't get to this one without first building that one and seeing what people like and don't like. The gearbox is a big difference though, because the same with the Vantage. You know, the Vantage versus the AMG GT.
Mm-hmm.
AMG GT is so much better because that Mercedes powertrain just works better with the Mercedes gearbox than it does with the ZF.
Right.
Same thing in the DBX.
Well, the other transmission, you had to translate German to English before the signal could get from the engine to the transmission. Yeah, it's just all built. It's probably just married from the factory, perfected from the factory. Yeah, I've heard very good things about the DBX from other people as well. So
That's
I'm looking
rad.
forward to driving it.
It's
in Canyon.
really fast. I was very surprised at how fast it was, especially like getting out of a 600 horsepower electric Cobra, and in a straight line even. You know, the DBX will take that thing. It really gets up and goes. It's very good.
Well, speaking of quick canyon stuff and quick exodus, so I've been driving this BMW 135i we have, which we could talk a little bit about.
Oh yeah,
You
sure.
know, so I drove this built GSX that was like slammed and had big power, and then I drove a 240SX that had a fully built SR20, about 430 wheel horsepower, also very quick. And it's so amazing that you get into something more modern. And like the evolution we have gotten to experience of cars, like in our time on Earth, is so amazing. Like I'd say like the 240SX to me is one of the cars that feels the most natural doing any kind of performance driving, even when it's like in base form. Mm-hmm. It gets ergonomics right, it gets sizing right and everything. But then still you jump into something that was engineered, let's say 20 years later. And this 135 has like 300 horsepower, 330 horsepower, feels like 400.
Yeah.
And it's just carries speed, the damping's so good, the seats hold you in well, and you're just like zip, and I was out of the canyon rather quickly. Yeah.
So the 135i, we decided to do a project car giveaway. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the questions that we get asked a lot, that's like, it's almost like not a meme, but like it's like trite at this point, is like, what's the best car for $30,000? And so we thought about how did we interpret that, and we figured we would interpret that as a canyon car that has some daily usability as well. It's not a race car. It's not something that's totally impractical or ergonomically shitty or really gives up anything for performance, but like a well-rounded, usable car. And so we bought a 09. Is it 09? I think it might be a 10. I don't know if it's a 9 or a 10, but it's a BMW 135i. It has
93,000 miles
3,000 miles on it. It's black on black. It's in really nice shape. It's completely stock. Seems like it's always been stock.
Yep.
And we're going to do a few key Canyon-focused modifications. We're going to do lightweight HRE wheels. We're going to do some Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires. We're going to do a coilover suspension that is set up by professionals for Canyon driving. We're going to do a little bit of little bit California legal power stuff. We're only going to modify the engine if it's going to be
50 state legal.
50 state legal, and then we're going to give it a full. We're going to do the 100,000 mile service. That is an expensive service, but we'll preemptively do that service. We got a bunch of Motul fluids that we're going to do. We'll do that service, and we're going to put an Optima battery in there. And if anyone else wants to give us parts that are tasteful and functional, we'll entertain offers. And then we're going to give the car away. Just like you might have seen on other channels.
We don't have the landing site yet at the time of you listening to this, unless if it's this week, the week of the 12th. But we're going to launch it on 9/22. We'll have a landing page, and you can go and buy a little bit of merch, get an entry, and win yourself. It's a fun experiment because we weren't like, let's just give away a pickup truck or what else is popular. It's like, what would we actually buy to solve a problem that we face all the time, that we get asked about all the time? Yeah, it's cool.
And the 135 is like the right size. It's got the right speed from the factory. Obviously, this car is a manual. It's a 6-speed manual. It has a lot of potential to go very fast with some basic modifications. It's reasonably reliable. It's reasonably luxurious, reasonably comfortable, very usable. It is not even reasonably, it is comfortable.
Definitely.
And whoever gets it is going to get a car that is going to be tailored to how we would have our own car set up. Not sure yet if Carbon is going to do the suspension similar to what they did on your BMW, or if we're going to get something off the rack, like with some KW adjustables. And just have them dialed in. We're still talking to them about that. They don't have a specific 135 setup at Carbon, but we're going to figure that one out. And you drove it all weekend to get a feel for it, to make the list of what it might need. What did you find?
Well, I think it's good that we're doing the 100,000 mile thing because I saw the odometer ticking towards 100, and I know that the radiators can go bad, just like plastic parts that get old, on the BMWs. I think we should do something. It has a rear wing stuck onto it, very, very small, lip spoiler. And
like aftermarket?
I don't know if it was bought from factory or not. I can't tell. It looks a little bit longer than something they might offer from BMW. But it has a clear coat peeling in one spot. So maybe we can do have the touch-up wizards you have at WCCS deal with that. We're going to clean it. And the ashtray door doesn't seal perfectly when you close it, which is a small detail, but it's it's annoying. Power seats work great. I mean, the bolsters are really good in that thing. The shifter, I feel, is honestly better than modern BMWs that I can remember. It's like, oh, where did this come from? How come they didn't move this forward? I don't know why. I don't know why it feels slicker and has more notchiness than some of the other stuff we've driven, like that M4, the M4 from a few years ago. I think it just needs a good detail on the paint to kind of freshen it up a bit. It is black. It's not like it's going to bring out a bunch of shine and flake to it. It's a pretty simple black, but I think it felt like there's no rattles in it. Going over bumps, it was fine. I got in it, and after 10 minutes, I was like, man, these are such good GT cars.
Yeah.
They are as comfortable for most people, I would say, as if you're driving an M3 or a 3 Series. And it's small enough, though, that placing it in traffic, parking it, all that stuff is really, really easy.
Yeah.
And yet you feel like you do have the engine of the bigger brother cars. I mean, to drive this thing 2,000 miles it'd be fun.
Yeah.
It'd be a good
They're
zip.
really nice little cars.
Yeah.
I really like them.
Yeah, and I've driven some that had M control arms on them and stuff. I mean, they shuffle.
Yeah.
And they can boogie.
Yeah. They're not slow.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So you can win this car, and next week we'll tell you where and how.
Yes.
But we're going to do a video driving it stock. We're going to do a video where we show the modifications that we're doing it, and a video where we drive it once we're done. And they'll get a paint correction from Derek. We'll maybe get we'll take a look at it and get the touch-up paint geniuses that we've got here at WCCS to maybe touch up a couple little areas. I don't know. Should we wrap it?
I don't know. I think after we clean it, we'll know.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to
not.
spend $2,000 on a paint correction.
Oh, very good point. All right. Yeah. Let's have Derek look at it. Have Derek look at it, and he'll tell us. You know, point out problem areas, and we'll see what can be fixed.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know. Maybe we can. Well, we'll check it out.
I mean, I didn't inspect the paint closely. I should clarify, but there was nothing that jumped out at me as like, this paint is fucked. Like, you know, it's a 100,000-mile car. It will look like a 100,000-mile car that was pretty well cared for, but driven, you know, frequently. It's gonna have a little bit of chips and stuff. We're not repainting the thing, but what we will do is make sure that it is mechanically as sound as we can get it, and also, you know, modified to a standard that we approve of. And
the car and the parts and stuff that we're putting into it will add up to $30,000. So it's going to be a $30,000 car. And I think whoever gets it we get a really nice package.
Yeah.
Should be good to go.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's that. And that'll be coming up over the next couple of weeks. Should we go to the people? Let's see what the people have to say today. This show, I don't know how long it's been, but this show may have 44. To be a little shorter than normal because of the hour and a half of shit show I was dealing with before this show, and I still have a lot to do for the rest of the day. So we were supposed to have Ryan Friedlinghouse, the founder and CEO of West Coast Customs, but he had a last-minute scheduling conflict and had to readjust. And so...
we'll get him in here, though. I'm excited.
Oh, and a quick update from last week's show. Alonzo called me, and he said he spoke to the guys at Iconic, and he was like, hey, man, I see that you made good money on that Grom. And they were like, oh, yeah, and they felt kind of bad, and they offered to, like, kick him back some cash. And he asked me what I thought he should do, and we both kind of agreed that he should not ask for money back, but he should ask to get like a credit for a service on his next bike or something. That they should pay it forward a little bit on the next thing.
It's a good system.
Yeah. And speaking of Iconic, my CX500 is done.
Oh shit!
So after we film tomorrow, I may just have you drop me directly over there to pick it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Turbocharged
motorcycle.
You're crazy.
From the night. Yeah, all 84 turbocharged.
I know, but
horsepower.
it still seems insane.
It does. It says turbo all over it.
Put a downpipe on it? How much?
I don't know how.
Get a manual boost controller at Home Depot. Turn this wick up.
If you fuck with this thing, it'll just eat itself. This is already a very, very fragile ecosystem happening in this motorcycle. The amount of money I had to spend to get it running is equal to or greater than what I paid for the bike.
Oof. Well, look, actually, the bike was cheap for
the bike was very cheap,
but still,
the bike was very cheap. But the things it needed were very extensive.
Yeah.
Let's see, DWBF 11. Family friend has a Porsche 993 cab pushing 200,000 miles. He's the original owner from new. It's been reasonably maintained, far from perfect cosmetically, but will likely be offered to me if I can figure out a reasonable price. How do you value a highly collectible car like a 993 with so many miles? Or tell me I'm an idiot for even considering it. It would be an occasional summer driver. If any car is going to hold up to that kind of mileage, it'll be an air-cooled 911. I mean, air-cooled 911s are incredibly durable if they've been maintained well. I mean, how do you value it? You could probably find comps.
Right.
If you dug around, like, you could find comps. I mean, those cars do exist with some miles. And condition, current condition does matter more than miles. Now, with 200,000 miles, you're out of the world of being collectible. Mm-hmm. It's not a collectible car at that point, unless someone specifically wants to buy the story. But it's not like it's 500,000 miles. At 500,000, it's a story. I mean, You ask me, 993 cab, 200,000 miles, you're probably looking at 35, 40 grand. It's a lot of money for a 200,000 mile car, but one with 100,000 miles is probably 60 grand. Mm-hmm. You know, one with 50,000 miles is probably 80. You know, and one with really 10, 15,000 miles is probably 125. So 35, 40 grand is pretty decent. Now, air-cooled cars need a major service every 100,000 miles. So you're going to want to figure out what that service costs and adjust that from the price, at least in part. But you're not necessarily an idiot for considering it. It probably, if it's been maintained, could run just fine.
For a long time. It's one owner. So if that owner is a responsible person, then, I mean, that's the best way to buy a high-mileage car.
Yeah. I mean, it's better than 4 owners, 200,000 miles for sure.
Yep.
You're much more likely to have maintenance that's been done properly. You know, spend a few $100 on a pre-purchase inspection.
Definitely.
And make sure that everything works and make sure there's no rust and stuff like that. But could be a fun way into a cheap 993, you know?
Yeah.
Ron Sanalwana, ever been to Singapore? I have not.
No.
Have you been to Singapore?
I just know it's expensive to own cars there.
Real expensive. Okay. Another question from DWBF11. Showing a car at Radwood, Detroit this weekend. First time I've had a car in a show of this caliber.
Prestige.
This caliber.
This prestige.
There's a lot of period accessories that go with it, etc., that I want to display with it. Other than putting everything on the dash and locking the car, any other suggestions for how to display the stuff without worrying about sticky fingers? I don't think people pilfer shit at car shows like that. I mean,
no, I have not heard one story of stuff props getting stolen.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's happened, but I feel like the fact that we haven't heard of it in the entire time Radwood has been operating is a pretty good sign. Because everyone who's there, for the most part, is there for like the joke. Yeah. Everyone's there for the experience. They see the prop, like, oh, that's cool. Oh, you paired that with this? Like, it's like taking Halloween decorations.
Yeah, and even if you go to like concourses and stuff, when they've got the picnic baskets and all that stuff, I never hear about that kind of shit.
Touch that, snipers get you from the roof. So, you know.
It's not like going to the Detroit Auto Show where people steal the shifter knobs off the, you know.
Right.
It's not like stealing from a manufacturer or whatever with general kind of audience. This is an enthusiast crowd going to this thing. I think your stuff is safe.
I feel like how to place them really depends on the car and what the props are. Like Sean down the street, you know, he runs Marina West Auto Body, is it? And he always brings like 4 wide body Mercedes that he built. He wears a suit with no shirt under it. He's got chains. He's got a briefcase full of money, and like he'll put the briefcase full of money on the hood, and then the cell phone sitting on like the dashboard. It's like, you know, you make it look like something might have just happened. Yeah. So if you can, that's what I would do, other than just laying out, you know, your G.I. Joes and be like, these are from the same year as the car. That's not as interesting.
Yeah. Dr. Simon, thoughts on front-wheel drive Audi TT variants? I'm not that into them. I mean, I like first-gen Audi TTs in terms of a styling thing, like a really nice, clean first-gen with the baseball glove interior, kind of and the Avis wheels, kind of into it.
Now, do you want it with the wing on the back, or do you want it death trap?
Oh, roll the dice on that arrow. Let me do a front flip in this motherfucker.
Get that Brazilian butt lift going.
No, I like a TT Quattro cab base cabriolet or Spider. What do you call it? Convertible. TT convertible, baseball glove leather, 6-speed Quattro.
Yeah, take it antiquing, whatever.
I'm feeling that.
Yeah,
a front wheel drive Audi to me is a Volkswagen.
Well, what's funny is I agree with you, but it's funny about what we're saying is the early TTs I've never thought of as like dynamically exciting, and yet there's something about our brain that sees only front wheel drive, and you're like, oh, well, what's the point? You're like, why are you here? It's like, well, if we're only here for the looks anyway, then what does it matter if it's a Quattro? There's just something about it.
It's a good point, but I just wouldn't spend Audi money at all on something that wasn't all-wheel drive.
Yeah, well, we can get an EOS.
Right? I drove them a lot. When the TT first came out, I was working at the Audi dealer. And so I drove the base one, the low-powered one, the Quattro, manuals, automatics, and I spent a lot of time driving those cars around, and I thought the Quattro convertible manual was actually quite nice.
Yeah.
It felt like a premium product, whereas the lower-end ones kind of didn't. Yeah. Michael Henolek going to Dirtfish. Nice. Thoughts on instruction in all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive?
Ooh, choose your own adventure over there.
I've done both. Equally fun. I mean, I wouldn't even say necessarily one is more fun than the other. They do offer. It's a slightly different experience. Well, first I would say, does either of those relate to your everyday driving? I mean, do you drive a rear-wheel drive car or an all-wheel drive car at home? If you can match that up, then the skills will more easily translate to your everyday driving.
Right. And in that vein, are you thinking of getting into rallying, or do you have a rally car or a drift car? Like, is there a performance type of driving you're getting into that would benefit most from learning all-wheel drive versus rear?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all-wheel drive to me, like, I love all-wheel drive rally cars, but I do think what Rally Ready and other schools do, where they start you in front-wheel drive, they do that because the same rules kind of apply to front-wheel drive and then all-wheel. And all-wheel lets you get away with a lot of stuff. Like, you can floor it early in a corner and the front drags itself around, and like, it's not going to step out too much in the back. I think you can learn better habits where only one axle is driven, so rear or front. And it'll just teach you to be more careful and more gentle on the throttle, and then you can graduate to the all-wheel drive system. Even though I feel like the jump from rear wheel to all-wheel is a little bit awkward, I would go with rear and just learn to be precise and learn to like feel the car through the seat and the hands.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's an excellent explanation. Front-wheel drive is hard and frustrating and weird.
Yeah, I agree.
Rear-wheel drive is more like intuitive in terms of what you think sliding will be. And I will say that all-wheel drive does really help you get in the left foot braking vibe.
True.
You use left foot braking a lot more with the all-wheel drive to tuck the nose.
True.
And so if you want to learn left foot braking, all-wheel drive is a good one.
That's a good point.
To do. Yeah, yeah. Connor Hawley, is the 718 GT4 worth the $30,000 over the 981 GT4? The plan is to send it to demand and track it. Well, the difference in price matters less if you're planning on sending both to demand. I mean, you get, you're going to get a massive performance bump by sending it over to Ricky D's. It wasn't my experience that the 718 was $30,000 more. I mean, I was able to get an allocation. And for, between the used ones cost the same as the new ones, frankly. That's why I bought a new one. I started by looking at used ones, and I went, holy fuck, these things are expensive used. Let me see if I can get an allocation. I got an allocation, and it ended up costing the same for a brand new car. That's how I ended up in a brand new car. Is it worth 30? I mean, 30,000. Worth is a tough word. You $30,000. You have it your way, your color, your interior, your options. It's built for you.
Are they running? I didn't have the time to like look up all the details, but maybe because your memory's amazing and you've driven all of these. Do they have the same like suspension setups in the 718?
It's not identical.
Because the dimensions are really close. Like
yeah,
the
it's not
wheelbase
identical.
stuff's real close.
It's close, but it's slightly different. The 718 is quicker out of the box. The geometries are a little bit better. The wheels are a slightly different size, I think. But it's pretty close. I mean, it's pretty close. In any given, one driver drives one, another driver drives another. Either one could beat another. Now, the 3.8 versus the 4.0, if you're going to demand and you're doing a 4.5, the 4.0 based 4.5s make about 30 extra horsepower.
So $1,000 per horsepower.
You get you get 535 or so out of a 981 based car. You get 565 out of a 718 based car. So that may matter to you.
I think it also matters if when they send it to demand, if they're also having suspension work done or bushing work done, like if you can take the cheaper car and then get more aftermarket suspension work done on it, and then spend the extra savings on like more track days or more instruction, you will probably be quicker around the track at the end of the day than you would be in the more expensive vehicle. It depends on so many different things.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the difference comes from, have it your way versus buying what's available.
Yeah.
Matt Cheseldine, is there a break-in period for the demand engine in the Porsche? Yes, 1,000 miles. But I feel like I have an opportunity. I'm doing a speaking gig at Auto in Phoenix. So if I drive it from here to Auto and back, that's like 900. So that's all. That'll pretty much do it.
Now, do they tell you that the braking can't just be steady freeway driving?
He hasn't yet.
Okay.
But
I mean, there's enough traffic here that we don't really have steady freeway driving, so it might be okay.
Yeah, he hasn't. But I obviously will follow up. But we'll see. Whatever it is, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll find a way to do it quickly, and it's not like the car's going to drive shitty below $5,000.
Right.
Like, it'll drive nice. So it is what it is. Maybe I'll just take the wife on a road trip, and then I won't be able to drive fast because she gets car sick. Andrew N.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Chris Harris recently said that Aston Martin and Maserati are brands that will never die, no matter how much trouble they get into because of the cachet behind their names. Do you agree? Are there other brand names that will never die? I think that's probably a decent thought. I mean, the brands have so much value that somebody will always step in to save them. There's always going to be someone who thinks, what this brand needs is me.
Or they see the commercial angle that, like, they could see the company failing and go, okay, here's what you need to change. I'll give you some money to do that, but here are the changes that will be made.
Yeah.
I think, like, in a bubble without infusions of cash, there are companies I could see going under just because they are less important. Like, Maserati hasn't won a race in 70 years.
Yeah.
And they are really clutching to that. But the new supercar is really, really good. So that grabs the attention of a whole new audience, a younger audience, and kind of reinvigorates everything.
It's incredible. Maserati is just a name that sounds so exotic that they could build straight garbage for 20 years. Just when you say,
true.
What do you drive? Maserati. Oh, that's
like that vowels.
sounds.
Goddamn.
Yeah, it sounds so exotic that you could build trash for 25 years. And the company's still around. Isn't that wild?
It is the sexiest Italian car name other than Ferrari. And Ferrari just is really known. But like Fiat,
not good.
You're done with the word before you get started, and that's not a beautiful Italian.
Yeah.
Italian words can be like a whole song in themselves.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Their name is just that good.
Yeah. And Aston Martins, for the most part, they're very good looking, and a certain type of buyer will always be drawn to them.
Yeah.
And you've got, look, if James Bond is a franchise that'll never die.
Right.
And as long as there's a James Bond, there's built-in marketing for Aston Martin.
Right.
I mean, I get that Aston Martin, I think it's called Vantage Magazine. It's like the quarterly mag for Aston owners.
Okay.
There's a Bond article in every fucking issue.
That's funny.
It's probably 3 issues per movie. And
it keeps it relevant.
Keeps it relevant, for sure.
That's really the key to the whole thing is, can you stay relevant in the general, in the auto sphere?
Yeah, and Aston's, they've never built anything, not never, but recently in the last 15 or in the modern era, in the 2000s, they haven't built anything that was straight garbage.
Right, true.
I mean, they've built cars that were maybe not as competitive for the money as other cars in the class, but nothing that was like garbage. Where it was like, oh God, what are you even doing? And even with the redesign of the Vantage, not everybody liked the redesign of the Vantage. I'm talking about the current one, but I see a lot of them. I mean, people are buying them. They're moving units. I see a lot of DBSs, and they're expensive as hell.
Yeah.
And I see a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So I mean, they have an excellent brand image. Other brand names that will never die. I mean, what other brands like Alfa Romeo?
In trouble.
Alfa Romeo will probably always have somebody who wants to take care of them, even if they're not selling anything good.
Yes, they're a staple of Italy. I mean,
yeah.
There's giant Italian conglomerates that would fund them if they had to.
Jaguar as well.
Yeah,
Jaguar is probably a brand worth keeping alive.
I mean, I guess like there's more car companies now, not more than ever, but there is a growing number these days with the EV sleds and all the other things, but there are more people in the world every year.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just market absorption.
Yeah. Aiden Squires, what are a few of your favorite watches under $500? I don't want this to sound douchey. I don't spend a lot of time looking at watches that are under $500. I love Seikos, probably because of Carl. Carl convinced me to love Seikos, and I've liked them ever since. And when it comes to watches that are cheaper, like I almost always buy the new Seiko Diver when it comes out because it scratches that itch. It's relatively affordable. I think they're incredibly well made. Yes, he brings up Tissot and Citizen, and those companies do make a quality product, but there's nothing that draws me to them. There's nothing about a Tissot where I'm like, when am I gonna? Because whenever I buy a new watch, I go of any price point. I say to myself, when am I going to take off my Rolex and put this on? And if I'm not attached to it, like my wife's watch made by my friend, I can look down at it and go, my friend Cameron made this from scratch. That's why I love that watch. Or if I got it, if there's something historical about it, like my old Speedmaster, where I like that it's from the 60s. Like Tissot makes like a fine quality product, but there's nothing about it where I go, I'm going to buy that to have in my collection and not wear this other really nice watch because of
well, especially like this Tissot, and happens to
looks an awful lot like
the watch you're actually wearing right now.
Right.
And I mean, I'm sure we know which one came first. So I can understand, like, this looks too close, genuinely aesthetically, to like, why would I take the Rolex off to wear something that looks very, very, very similar? I mean, even whatever the marks are instead of numbers, like, I don't know the watch terminology, so I'm going with triangle, circle, circle, rectangle. But you also have triangle, circle, circle, rectangle.
And even with the Seikos, like I customize those, So when I wear them, I'm like, I don't do it myself. I have people who do it, but when I wear those, like it's got some of my own aesthetic touch in there. It's not just an off the rack thing. So I feel slightly cool because mine is a little different than the other ones that I might see. So a lot of people ask me about $500 watches, and I just don't spend that much time looking at $500 watches. So that's why I always say Seiko.
But is the emotion the same no matter, maybe within a range for the dollar price? Like if someone's shopping under 500, let's say that's like you shopping under 3,000. So it's like, find something you like, that you like the way it looks, that you're proud to wear, and that is made by a good company. Yeah. And that's it. Like that's all the criteria you need.
Yeah. There's good watches for $500. Like Tissot makes a good watch. Citizen makes a great watch. Zodiac makes a nice watch.
The boat company?
Different company.
Okay.
Pretty sure the watch company came first, but they do make a nice watch. There's a couple out there that are nice, but because I don't have an attachment to them, whether it's aesthetically or emotionally or because I've customized them, I'm not in the market.
Got it.
Sorry, that's probably not helpful, but it be what it be, man. Bijan, have I driven the base Q3? And if so, what are your thoughts on the transmission? I haven't. I drove the SQ3 and it was $66,000. And when I got in it and put the transmission into gear, I felt the MQB-ness wrap itself around me.
Ooh, Golf R.
And it was a fucking Golf. It felt super golfy. Yeah. The transmission feels just like the DCT in the Golf and the GTI.
But it's $20,000 more than
And
a Golf R.
when you put it in park, you have to fucking set the parking brake because there's all that slop in park. You know that?
Yeah.
That gearbox, it doesn't hold itself in park.
Dodges used to do that.
Yeah, you got to set the parking brake too. Yeah, it feels like a Golf, sir. Mr. Nailhead drives a 2011 Mazda 2. I love that it's basic but well made. There you go. But I like what I've seen about the new Civic Si. What would you do? Spend a little money and keep the Mazda in good shape, or get a new car and be making payments? My commute is 3 miles.
So wait, so to clarify, I think, is he saying he would spend a little money on the Mazda?
Spend money on the Mazda to keep it in good shape.
Okay.
Or sell it and get a new car with payments. 3 miles commute, I would keep your Mazda in good shape and pocket that money.
Yeah, that's so short. I mean, even if it's 3 miles in LA, that means you're not going anywhere. But like either way, it's not a lot of time spent in the car.
Yeah.
So you'd be spending more money per month on a new thing that you're not spending that much time in, unless you do a lot of road trips and stuff.
Yeah.
Like the Civic Si is a much larger vehicle than the Mazda 2.
And a lot of that extra space goes to a big back seat and a big trunk.
Yes.
So you're carrying around a lot more car that you probably aren't using.
Yeah.
So I would say just keep that Mazda 2 going. And I mean, how much could it cost to maintain that thing? I mean, a couple services, tires,
$200 a year,
like nothing.
Yeah.
I drove a Mazda 2. It's pretty nice for what it is. Like you said, basic but well made, and zippy, totally accurate. Like I would just keep that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and at 20, the car's 11 years old. It's bottomed out.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like at this point, it's not depreciating anymore.
No.
You know, it's at this point it's old enough that the mileage doesn't even matter anymore. It's like, does it work? Has it been serviced? So just keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael Farahani, almost a great last name, so close. Tom Segura posted something about his E46 BMW. Update on Three Bears Racing.
There
is none.
They took it out to a track.
He told me he was
testy.
Yeah, he told me he was going to do a test day. I didn't. When was it? Like recently?
I think it was 2 days ago.
Okay, I haven't caught up with him yet. Now that I know,
curious to find out. I
was
wrote
super stoked about it.
I was like, if the check engine light comes on, it's just the BMW saying hello. And he thought that was funny. God,
I will have to follow up with him. The Three Bears race. I've done everything I can do. I've arranged for a car. I've arranged for a trailer. I've arranged for track time with him. I've tried to get. We could get free suits and free helmets, but these fucks won't even give me their measurements.
Right.
Like I got Leanne's measurement, Leanne's dad's measurement. I got Bert's daughter's fucking measurements. No Bert. I'm like, Leanne.
That actually might be good because they're all doing sober October, I think, so their measurements could change. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they're waiting to get to fucking be skinny or something.
Yeah, but you've done everything.
I've done everything I can do. When they tell me they're ready, like I gave them the schedule of races for next year for some of the series. Some aren't out yet, but like I need them to clear their schedules. This is their race team. I'm just like tagging along.
Yeah, you're like Mila Kunis in 40-Year-Old Virgin, where she's like, I moved, I changed my email, I changed my address. You're like, I called them, I emailed, I sent them suit measurement sheets.
Yeah.
They got everything they need.
I've done everything I can do. People keep asking me about it, and like I appreciate that it seems like fun, and like that I'm probably more accessible than Tom or Bert to ask about it. But like I don't fucking know. Like I don't know. I want to help, but like
I would say
nothing.
for the listeners, viewers, as excited as you are to see it happen, I'm sure Matt is 10 times more excited because you get to drive and do it.
Yeah, I get to actually race the car, which I want to do, but I don't like have anything.
Yeah.
All right. Dan Williamson following up.
So Dan asked us about why other OEMs aren't opening charging networks the way Tesla did.
Right.
So that's the context.
Okay, so follow up to that. I agree brand-specific chargers are dumb, and despite owning a Tesla, I agree their motivations are profit-driven. Tesla hides behind blah, blah, blah. My question is, why doesn't Ford, Kia, etc. realize that a functioning charger network is a positive selling point for people to buy their cars and build their own charging network? Well, those companies invest in other charging networks. Volkswagen owns Electrify America.
Right.
So it's not called the Volkswagen Charger, but it's called Electrify America, and it's owned by Volkswagen. So the building, they do believe that, but they are also Ford. There's a great article on The Drive written by, it was from like a month ago, about steps that Ford is taking to quality check public chargers. So
Right.
Ford is getting involved with Electrify America and ChargePoint and these other companies to act as QC people and sending teams around to QC the chargers. So the OEMs do realize that, but it's not like the OEM's like business. They're not in the charger business, and some of them aren't anyway. Like, and I don't know. I don't know how much they are able and how much they are willing to invest in their own money into something that should be considered utility infrastructure.
Yeah.
You know, I like why we aren't seeing more brand-specific chargers, since the multi-brand options aren't working well, because it's more difficult to make it work with all brands. The reason they aren't working well is because the incentives incentivize building more chargers and not maintaining the existing ones. If there were more incentives, and I mean, there's probably more complicated than this, but in my experience and what I've read and people I've talked to, the incentives are for having this number of chargers. So build.
Right.
build. The incentives are not set up to have uptime, the highest percentage uptime available. And they're also, the uptime is self-reported in a lot of the things. There's not some agency that's verifying uptime, you know, with all this stuff. So,
Well, think about it, if you're a politician and your constituents are saying, hey, we want charging infrastructure, it's the simple thing to do in terms of it's simple to explain to people is go, we're building 10,000 of them. Everyone goes, great. But if you said, we're building 9,000, but the uptime of ours is going to be higher than, and everyone starts to go, I'm bored, I'm going to go order something on Amazon. Like, it's just very simple. They get the stimulus, or they get whatever money they get for it and the various incentives for it. And also, think about if you're Ford and you're like, all right, we're going to build our own charging network for our Mustang Mach-E because we don't like what's out there. Now you have to figure out what cities you're going to put those chargers in, which parts of those cities you're going to put those chargers in, and then is that going to isolate your cars to only selling in those parts of those cities?
Right.
Because people south of you are going to go, well, that's too far for me. I'm going to go look at a Tesla or a Kia or something else. So now you kind of fragment the entire country and the entire market, and you actually will lose market share.
right. And if the problem is that the universal charging is unreliable right now, the solution to that isn't abandoning universal charging. The solution is fixing universal charging. So Dan's question is, why aren't we seeing more brand-specific chargers since the multi-brand options aren't working well? Because the brands understand that you don't abandon that system because it's not working well. You fix that system. And so I don't know about Hyundai and Kia, but Ford are at least taking some kind of steps to improve that system.
Yeah, before you get divorced, go to counseling.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and
There's
I
a
mean,
lot
they
of that.
understand, like, because it's wasteful. It's wasteful from a utilities perspective. It's wasteful from a land perspective. It's wasteful in a lot of reasons. Like, you come up with a different charging adapter, like, so you're actually limiting, in some ways, your customers as well. Your customers want universal charging also.
Right.
So, and I know you can plug a Tesla with an adapter into like an EA thing, but it just, universal charging is good. Single brand charging is bad, even if single brand charging is more reliable in the very short term. Yeah. And watch question, are we close to the bottom for Rolex sport watches, GMT, Batman specifically? No idea. How would I know? There'd be no way for me to know. Rolex can choose to build more watches.
Right.
The stainless steel Rolex market is artificially restricted by Rolex's choice. So any day they want, they can choose to build more watches. So, no idea. It's not a market that can be studied analytically and certainly not predictably. You can look at the past. I can say that we're down, 30% from this crazy peak that was driven by crypto money. We're down from that. But where the bottom is, who the fuck knows? I can tell you they're going to make half of what they could sell ever. Their brand is built on having a watch that isn't worth all that much money, but making you suck a dick to get one. You got to buy some shit. You got to buy a whole bunch of garbage to get the good stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. Don't know what the bottom is. Caleb is looking for a newer sedan, $30,000 to $50,000. I have an E63 and would like your take on other options comparable to it. To an E63? Well, your options are very obvious.
M5, S7.
Yep.
Yeah.
M5, S7. The RS7.
RS5. I mean, it's a little smaller, but also that.
S7 is going to be not as quick.
That's the E63?
Yeah. M5 will be.
Yep. But 30 to 50 grand.
30 to 50 grand is not a lot for. You're buying a 100 grand maintenance,
right?
For
that's
30
a gutsy
to 50
bet
grand.
to put down on an M5 that's cost. Let's say you get an M5 for 40. I don't know.
Comparable. I mean, maybe you could get a what is a Lexus
Genesis?
GSF going for?
Those are been about 40, but they'll work.
If a GSF, not F Sport, an actual GSF. That would be money. That's the one I'd want. They're
2019.
Yeah, GSF.
2016 GSF is 53.
2016. That's an F Sport.
I'm just looking at True Car.
GSF came out in 18 or 19.
Oops.
I think.
Let me look.
Yeah. If you can find a Lexus GSF, that's the one I'd want.
We'll use
because that has good power, good balance. But 30 to 50K for a high performance German luxury sedan, you are buying yourself into
CLS.
You're getting risky.
Well, CLS is basically the car you have, but with less rear headroom. On Auto Tempest, we got a bunch. 2016. It says GSF.
They have GSFs?
Up, down, left, right, and sideways.
Oh,
they're all. Let's see, 55 grand, 54 grand, 55.
Okay.
These are all mid 50s, and then as they get newer into 2020, we're talking 74,000.
Oh yeah.
So if you want something from 2016, they started around 45.
Okay. Yeah, that's where my head would be at. That's a great sounding motor.
Yep.
Very reliable. Great balance, really well made.
Yeah, I agree.
30 to 50 for an AMG car or an RS car or an M car, you're buying some maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, things are going to break.
Yeah. Really expensive things.
And then your $40,000 car is a $60,000 car.
Yeah, exactly.
No, thank you.
Well, that's our show today. We appreciate all the Patreon questions. Patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast if you want to get in that game. I got to get better at promoting that at the beginning of the show, don't I?
I was going to tell you that, actually.
Yeah.
Literally was going to talk to you about that after the ads.
I forgot to say it earlier.
Well, we're recording the ads, so you can
I can say it now. Say it now, of course. Hopefully, Mr. Friedlinghouse of West Coast Customs is able to reschedule. And we will see you guys next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.